Hello and welcome back to Entirely English. We are continuing with our study of English idioms that began in the Royal Navy. Today's idioms begin with the letter M. Our first idiom is maiden voyage, to go on one's maiden voyage. We need to look at the two words first of all. Voyage is a journey on the sea, ocean, maybe a lake, and maiden is the term that was given to a woman who was unmarried, a virgin. So Maid Marian from Robin Hood fame was unmarried, that's why she was called Maid Marian, unmarried. Maiden voyage was the first voyage a ship went on. You've heard of the Titanic. It was launched on the 31st of May 1911 and set out on its maiden voyage on the 10th of April 1912. On the 15th of April it struck an iceberg and sank. So it sank on its maiden voyage, the first time it went out to sea. So we use the idiom a maiden voyage to describe when somebody does something or experiences something for the first time. So a person might say, this program is my maiden voyage into telephone apps. Our next idiom in common use is making waves. Now, in the old days, one ship could cause trouble for a ship behind it by moving their ship from side to side, causing the bow, that's the front of the ship if you remember, to produce these large waves, and they go behind them and force the ship behind them to reduce speed because the waves are creating resistance. So when a ship was making waves, it was causing problems for those behind it. We use it these days when one person is doing something to draw attention to themselves or to cause problems. So we'd say, look, Simon has already committed the company to the takeover deal. If you raise issues with it now, you'll be making waves and they won't like it. You could get into trouble. Our next idiom, which is still in common use, is Motley Crew. The crew, if you remember, those are the sailors who work on the ship. They were often formed like the military in the Royal Navy. They were very well trained, but sometimes, like when you needed a strong force to go out to Africa or something, you might conscript or press gang, we'll come to that in the PE section. Basically it means to force people into the Navy, and they wouldn't be trained, they'd be cobblers and street sweepers, window cleaners, anybody you could just grab off the street and force onto the ship. So they weren't trained, they weren't all wearing the same uniform, they were all very different. Motley comes from the word which originated long before this in the Middle Ages to describe clothes which were made up of patches of rags, or like the jesters used to wear, which were different colours. So they didn't match, they didn't go together very well. So a motley crew was a crew who didn't work together, they weren't a unit, and they probably didn't look organised or indeed very smart, I think clean. This term is often used these days to describe a group of people who are mismatched or ill-matched, but they've been brought together for a particular reason. Again, you might see it in films when a group of people have been assembled to rob a bank, and the person who's in charge looks at them and says, oh, what a motley crew. They look awful, there's no discipline, there's no cohesion between them. Or another situation, a person might be describing their holiday and they say, we tried to put up the tent for about 4 hours, but we were such a motley crew we ended up tearing the tent in half and had to sleep in the car. So they were disorganised, they didn't know what each other was doing, they got in each other's way and the tent was destroyed because they were a motley crew. We'll do one more because it's quite a good historic one. This is to meet your Waterloo. To meet your Waterloo. Some of you will be familiar with the ABBA song Waterloo. It's a good example. phrase refers to the 1815 battle which happened outside the town in Belgium of Waterloo, in which Napoleon was finally defeated by the Duke of Wellington. It was used a couple of times before, but the first instance of it being used in literature was by Arthur Conan Doyle. In The Return of Sherlock Holmes in 1905, Arthur Conan Doyle wrote, "We have not yet met our Waterloo, Watson, but this is our Marengo." Marengo was a battle in Italy in which Napoleon's forces were surprised by an Austrian attack and came close to defeat. So the Marengo is not an idiom we use these days, but to meet your Waterloo means to be defeated in some situation. For example, a person might say, "I thought people would be interested in learning, but in making YouTube videos, I met my Waterloo." I hope that's not going to be true. Okay, so those were idioms beginning with M that originated in the Navy, and we still use them these days. I hope you found it interesting, and I'll see you again soon for N. Bye bye now.